Welcome to all of our locations. We are in this series. It's very new to most of us. In fact, if you missed the first week, let me just bring you up very quick to speak. We're talking about a guy named Jesus. Now, Jesus, a guy from an entirely different place, a different culture, different language, different era, all of this. Yet you and I are still talking about a guy named Jesus. You've heard of Jesus, whether you grew up in church or maybe this is your first time, which, by the way, welcome. We are talking about a guy named Jesus, and more than that, what's the big deal about Jesus? Like, why are churches built on this conversation about this guy and this center point of Jesus? We're talking about that. In fact, I want to give you another reason this week of why Jesus is absolutely incredible. But I need a favor from you. This is very simple. I'm going to read a story to you, and you're in the story. Like you are in the story, so I need you to find yourself in the story. You'll get it as I read it. There are different characters, different groups, and as I read it, I want you to begin to understand, wait, I am one of these people. I live the way one of these people lives. And so find yourself as I read through it, okay? Got it? Here we go. Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning, he was back again at the temple. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. As he was speaking, and here's where, as the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd. Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? Now, just if you're new to the Bible and new to Jesus and you're like, oh, okay, no, they aren't honestly asking a question. They don't like Jesus. These religious leaders, I know you're like, what? No, they don't like him. And so they're trying to set him up, and they're using another person and what this other person has gotten themselves into as like they're arming the situation, trying to trick him. They're trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him, literally so they could kill him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with what a master's class is. Like, you can go online and learn all different types of trades now. YouTube is this new university, right? And you can get into life and begin to learn what maybe you said what you really needed to know. What Jesus just showed us is what you really needed to know. And if you have a hater right now in life, you probably do. If you don't know, you do. You've got someone who that says things to you, about you, around you, that makes your life incredibly difficult. When they say things to you, trying to trick you or mess you up or just degrade you, Jesus just gave you a master's class of what to do first. When someone says something to you and tries to trick you, step one, ignore them. Just ignore them. It's good. Apply it. They kept demanding an answer. I mean, isn't that how haters are? They kept demanding an answer, so he stood up again and said, all right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. If you've never been to church, never read the Bible, perhaps some of us you have heard, though, glimpses of, culture talks about this, throwing the first stone, judging like that. Then he stooped down again and wrote in the dust. When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, some might argue because they're the wisest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, oh, where are your accusers? It's Jesus again. He knows exactly where they've gone, but he's trying to draw her attention to what really just played out. Where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. I love this story. You may have heard it, you may not. Maybe it's brand new. You're like, okay, so these guys were going to kill this woman for doing something that she should not have done. Can we just acknowledge now that she and the unnamed other guy were hurting a marriage and were betraying people? And what she did, she should not have done. And the reaction was these people were trying to kill her, and Jesus kind of steps in and deals with it in a profound way and says, hey, don't do that anymore. Don't sin anymore. There's a lesson there. In fact, I want to help this lesson walk out into your life and mine, because as we talk about Jesus, it's not just about talking about a guy. It's about what about him do we let play out in our own lives? So this idea of why do you tell her not to sin? Let me take you to another part of the Bible. It's called 1 John. My dear children, I am writing this to you. Now just stop for a second. I'm writing this to you. In other words, I'm writing this long set of words, what we call a book in the Bible. I'm writing this to you. He's about to say, I'm going to tell you the whole agenda of why I'm sitting down to spend all of this time to write to you. I'm writing this to you so that you will not sin. Hopefully you see the connection. Jesus tells the woman, hey, you're good now. Don't keep doing what you're doing. Don't sin anymore. And now we read later on in the Bible, a writer going, hey, I'm writing this for you. I'm writing this to you, for you, so that you will not sin. Think about that. That you will not sin. Jesus said we shouldn't sin. This guy's going, the whole reason I'm writing this so you won't sin. And I wonder what your approach is to, if you've ever dealt with this, if you want someone to not do something. Think about that. If you've ever talked to anybody and said, hey, you need to stop doing that, what's been your approach? You might even think you know what we're about to read. So let's read it. Okay, I don't want you to sin. You need to stop sinning. Don't do this. I'm writing this for you. But if anyone does sin, we have an advocate who pleads our case before the Father. He is Jesus Christ, the one who is truly righteous. He himself is the sacrifice that atones for our sins, and not only for our sins, but the sins of all the world. Now, this just took a turn that I need to draw your attention to. Jesus tells the woman, don't sin anymore. Then this other guy's like, hey, I'm going to write this, and the whole agenda I've got to writing this is that you won't sin. And you might think, okay, I know how to help people not sin, is to threaten their lives. Can any parents at all been in this situation where you're literally going to one of your kids, hey, don't do this or else. You kind of like tighten the or else. I mean, okay, I'm flat out super guilty of this. I'm just going to fess up to you. That I have multiple times been like, hey, do your chores or I'm removing every privilege that you will ever have for the rest of your entire young adult life. Right? I mean, some of you, we do this. We use this as leverage. Some of you are like, no, that's a threat. Okay, whatever. It's do this or else. You got a guy writing, don't sin, and you might be putting words into his mouth that he didn't say, or you're going to burn in hell. Don't sin, or your whole life's just going to be wrecked, and you're a horrible person, and you don't want to be a horrible person, so don't sin. Notice that's not what he wrote. Notice that's not what Jesus said to the woman. Notice he didn't tell her, don't sin, or I'm coming after you. Don't sin, or I'm going to be really angry with you. You see, in this story, particularly with Jesus and this adulterous woman, we learn something so powerful about Jesus. Jesus is an advocate. In this series, we've already talked about Jesus as God. Let's move further. Jesus is an advocate. And if you're like, well, I'm not sure exactly what an advocate is, okay, and I get that it's not a regular term that you and I are using all the time. Jesus is an advocate, though. Here, not an accuser. this is important. This is that you see the difference between Jesus' approach. Notice, Jesus doesn't say to the woman, you had an affair? No biggie. It's good. No, he acknowledges what's playing out, and he says, don't go do that anymore. But he doesn't live the accuser way. I mean, think about how that's happened. Think about like what literally they're wrestling with. You've got a group of people trying to kill this woman. They're accusing her. In fact, that's what the actual part of the Bible that I read to you used. It uses these words. They were accusing. If you want to know Jesus and follow Jesus and be a Christian, you've got to learn this about Jesus. He's an advocate. It's a big deal. Now, some of us wrestle with this right now because I know we have different personalities listening, and we're like, but what she did was wrong. Right. That's a part of this. The accusation was right, but the accusers were wrong. There was, there was this, they're accusing her of something she actually did, and it's horrible. But their attitude was wrong. Their approach was wrong. The accusation was right, but the accusers were wrong in how they went about it. That's what I want to bring up. Jesus didn't ignore the truth, but he stayed as an advocate. Now, I know where this comes from because you and I are like this. Don't feel bad. I'm not hating on you, okay? There's a sense in us, I might call it a craving, that justice around us happens. If you ever have someone cut you off in traffic or speed by and you're going the speed limit, and you're like, that makes you so mad because that's just not right. If you're at work and someone's like kind of coloring over the lines a little bit, and you're like, that's not right, and you're right. See, in us, we want justice. We think a world full of all of the right laws and rules is fantastic, especially when people follow all of the laws and rules. There's this thing in us that truly believes a just world is the best world. So when you and I wrestle with this woman who's like breaking up a marriage and things are falling, and now she's in front of Jesus, part of us is torn because we're like, you homewrecker. Jesus doesn't do that because you and I are wrestling with craving a just world, and it's not that things aren't true. It's not that wrong isn't wrong. But can I just lean in and ask, what kind of attitude have you been taking? Could potentially your pursuit of justice, listen, your pursuit of justice, perhaps it's turned you into an accuser and you've lost being an advocate. You know where this is happening all of the time. Have you been to a sporting event lately? Let me show you something, and then we'll talk afterwards about what's going on at kids' sporting events. Take a look.
Sports is meant to be fun, but some referees are arriving at their breaking point because of parents behaving badly.
The schools will walk you out with a security guard, and you try to park your car in areas where you know the fans aren't.
Is it dangerous being a ref?
It's more the emotional and the verbal abuse.
Across the tri-state area, the current crop of refs are aging out, and new ones are turning in their whistles. According to the National Federation of High Schools, 80% of new refs quit after 2 years because of abusive behavior from the stands and sidelines.
We would love to get players from the local schools to come and be officials. And they've outright told us, no, we don't want to be screamed at.
If one parent speaks out or one parent yells at an official, that maybe other parents start to see that as acceptable behavior.
In some places, it's leading to a shortage of refs and games canceled, which means the actions of parents are threatening to alter the landscape of sports.
We can't just plug a game and, hey, I want to play next Tuesday. We don't have officials to accommodate them.
Right now, Long Island is operating with about half of the referees and umpires needed. Aggressive parents may feel they are supporting their children, but it's the exact opposite.
JV girls basketball game, might call the travel. And the mother goes, that's a horrible call, ref, you stink, and the girl turns to her mother and goes, Mom, shut up, I traveled.
Ultimately, the price is being paid by the children because it's their parents who are embarrassing them in front of their friends.
Maybe we could do it by kids actually asking their parents, can you please just let me play this game without questioning every single call.
That's ridiculous. You haven't made a decent call yet.
Parents can yell, but it won't make a ref change his call. In Farmingdale, Long Island, Steve Overmeyer, CBS 2 News.
Okay, I know like a portion of us right now are just feeling shame. We're just like, oh, no. By the way, to kind of compound this a little bit, I heard even this week that our own area, our own region is experiencing the same consequences to parents behaving the way that they're behaving at sporting events, to where it's becoming difficult for leagues to find refs and umps. But you're like, but the call was wrong, right? I get it. And I'm not trying to hate on you. We've all thrown a rock, right? Come on. We've all moved out of an attitude that we should have and moved more towards being an accuser, where we've seen people do wrong, make a mistake, and we've grabbed rocks and thrown, or at least we're about to throw rocks. I am in no way trying to make you feel like worthless, because I have many times, even sometimes it's just to a TV, which just seems idiotic that I would yell at a TV. But we've got to be a group of people who says, I don't think living as an accuser is Jesus' best for us. In fact, let's dive into this a little bit more. Let's create some definition and put some flesh around this. The accuser attitude, some of us are there, maybe a lot of us are here right now. This accuser attitude, what does that look like? So you're like, I don't want to be that. Okay, accuser attitude by definition, to charge someone with an offense. And some of you are like, well, what if they did wrong? I get it. This is an attitude. This is where you walk into work, home, with your friends, where anything you look at, you're around. It's an attitude, a repetitive over and over and over attitude. It's what you bring in with you to about every setting. It's not one moment where you're like, what was done was really wrong. Pay attention to the attitude. What's your attitude? You point out mistakes. Nonstop. Over and over. That's it. Talks about others, right? If you've ever met someone who, maybe sometimes the term is gossip, or just talks about what was going on in the lives of other people all the time. If you never caught that, that's an accuser attitude going, you wouldn't believe what they, let me tell you about so-and-so, or how could that, and it's this constant accuse, and you demand punishment all the time. Someone screws up, group of people screws up, you're like, you deserve, and you're going to get, and it becomes this demand that this person is taking, saying, you have to be punished because we want a just world, and this attitude that begins to, I'd say, destroy relationships. So what kind of attitude did Jesus have? Well, like I told you already, flat out what the Bible says. He was an advocate. Let's look at this. This is important. In fact, if you take notes, if you miss the accuser stuff, at least write this down, because this is super important. This is what you and I ought to be like. This needs to be like in my world. A defender and comforter. See, some of us right now, we're squirming. We're like, but I don't like what they did. I guarantee you, Jesus didn't like what this woman was doing. We have proof. He is quoted at telling her to stop doing it. You and I have got to move beyond, and this is so tough. I get it. Move beyond. And here's what it looks like to move beyond. An advocate seeks reconciliation, not division. Yeah? You understand what I'm saying now? We live in a nation that is probably as divided as ever, right? I mean, an election year, but it's not just in politics. We know that. I wonder what your workplace is like, or what your school's like, what your family might be like. What happens when you and your spouse fight? Do you accuse, or are you an advocate? I'm giving you answers to reveal that. Do you seek reconciliation? Do you lead with grace? Like, lead with it. If you don't know what that means, it's first. You bring grace first. Not what you did and that. No. Have you ever started when someone's offended you? You start off going, you know what, I just want to, before we go after this, before we talk about this, I love you. And you are something who's still important to me. In fact, probably my favorite, an advocate always sees the person. Listen, not the problem. They're not ignoring the problem, but they see the person. And in the mess of what goes on, in the betrayal and the breaking and I can't believe, or I'm totally shocked, an advocate says, no matter what played out, you're still a human being. God still loves you. You still have value. We got to work through some stuff now. Things have broken apart, and this is going to take some time. But you are a person. Many of us right now, okay, just in the sports, you look at the ref, and they're not even a person to you. Walk it even more. Some of you look at your spouse, and you don't even treat them like a person. Oh, come on, let's keep going with this. Some of you look at your kids when they don't do what they're supposed to, and they're no longer even a human being. They are a representative of your own self-confidence or lack of. These are people, what you work with, where you're at. People. An advocate never loses sight of this. And Jesus reveals something in the midst of how he encountered this woman. Jesus never wants evil to win. And I'm just going to take this time. I think some of us have a hint of being okay when evil wins, if it doesn't win in our lives. I think some of us look at what happens to other people, their dumb choices, right? Evil winning in a person's life. And unfortunately, some of us who call ourselves Christians find some satisfaction in that. Can I just tell you, not only is that horrible, but that's not at all what Jesus was like. He was an advocate. So I thought we could turn this into, like, how do you and I, practically speaking, like day-to-day kind of life, something that you and I could plug into our family life, friend life, work life, school life. What do you and I actually, how can we do this? Be true advocates, not accusers. I got a couple for you. Here's one. Let's stop canceling everyone who disagrees with you. Okay? Yeah? Can you? Can you just stop this canceling of, I don't like what you said, you are dead to me? This has a term nowadays, by the way, called the cancel culture. You can read about it. It's getting put into dictionaries. It's so popular now. It's where oftentimes someone, typically a public figure, does something, is accused of something, and without looking for facts, without looking for what really played out, all of a sudden that person is getting unfollowed, blocked, rejected, spoken of badly. News articles are getting written. And this is called cancel culture, where constantly we hear something, we don't chase down the truth of it, and we just cancel them. I think this has made its way into the church. I think the church actually has a reputation of cancel culture, where someone does get themselves into what's called sin, what Jesus called sin, what was written in 1 John about sin, and someone gets themselves into that. They betray someone and they steal something, they say something they shouldn't. There's a whole long list, right? We don't need the list of all different kinds of sins, but can we just admit that the church has a reputation as that if someone does something stupid, they're canceled? I have too many stories of people being told they couldn't go back to that church. Jesus is an advocate, which means if you are a Jesus follower, you are claiming to be an advocate. Let's stop canceling everybody who just doesn't fit into our political party, our worldview, our favorite whatever. You and I have got to be better advocates. That's what Jesus has to teach us. But can we go a little bit further in this? I'd like to. Just a little bit. It's not just about saying, I'm not going to cancel you. I'm going to keep following you, even though I hate your guts. No, let's take it further. Help repair what is wrong. It's not just about saying, okay, I won't put a wall up between us, right? There's a part of that. I'm not going to put a wall. But it's an advocate says, let me help repair what is wrong. Let me get a little messy. For those of you who have been born like maybe in the last 10, 20 years, I don't know, I need to show you something that maybe you have never seen your entire life. This is a typewriter. Yep. Some of you need to write this down. You're Googling it just to find out, I've never seen such a thing. You see the keyboard. You're like, well, is that digital? No, it's not. No. There's ink in here. It gets kind of messy. And there was a day where if you wanted, you didn't have a printer. If you needed like anything on paper of any sort, you would type it out and it would just type, right? Here's the problem, because some of you are like, what do you do? Where's spell check? Spell check was here. That's what you had, and maybe a paper book that was called a dictionary. But all of us would screw up. You would, just like you do now on your phone, or you mess up. You hit the wrong one, and you're like, uh-oh. I mean, so in the 60s, some smart people invented what's called whiteout. This is it. Maybe you've seen it before. So if you're young, you're like, yeah, I didn't know what that was. Is that nail polish? No, it's not nail polish. This is what you would unscrew the cap, and it's full of this liquid. That the liquid would match the color of the paper. And what you would do is you would scroll up a little bit, right? And then you would white that out. And then you would scroll back down and try your best to match it right. And you could save all that you had typed. Huh? There's a lesson for us here. The lesson is that some of us have screwed up, and we were taught or shown by accusers that there is no whiteout, there is no way to fix this, and you are just a waste. This helps us know that there are two kinds of people in this world, advocates and accusers. And you're one of them. I wonder if you'd be willing to look at other people's messes. I don't know if you've ever done this. Some of you haven't, but you often would get the stuff on your fingers. It was messy to kind of do this. This wasn't the simplest thing. And thank God himself for giving wisdom to people to invent computers and phone. Oh, that's fantastic. But if you want to know why Jesus is such a big deal, even in a moment where he saw people do wrong, he still saw that they were people. He still saw an opportunity for that person to live life better and to live the full life. That's what an advocate believes. An advocate doesn't get so justice-oriented that they forget that people have value. So what do you do with this lesson? Remember the story? You drop the rock. You drop it. Remember when I asked you to find where you were in the story? I wonder where you've landed. What person, what group you were in the story. whoever you decided you were when we read the story, maybe there's a different person you'd like to be. And my recommendation is that you choose Jesus. To do so, you're going to have to go through all the hurts that you've experienced, the injustices. You're going to have to go through how maybe people have hurt you and offended you, or you might have to go like how you've kind of gotten out of a good attitude and you went to a bad attitude. And it leads us basically to the response of you need to drop the rock. In fact, here's how I want to do. I typically will conclude our time together like where I'll pray for us, right? I'm not going to do that right now. In fact, here's what we're going to do. At all of our locations, your pastor, one of your pastors is going to come up and is actually going to help all of us, walk through how to drop the rock. Like what do we right now in this moment apply? So with that mindset, let's move towards an attitude of what do I need to do to be like Jesus, to be an advocate?